In this episode, Graham Hancock dives into conspiracy theories and shares his thoughts on mysterious topics like Antarctica, the pyramids, ancient aliens, and even a lost underwater city. He starts by revealing how he once climbed the Great Pyramids illegally.
I saw this unbelievable story of you going to the top. I got like a quarter of the way up by myself, and I was there with my wife, and I was like, I'm not trying to get arrested and have her just be alone in Egypt. And so I pushed out and I went back down.
Probably a wise decision, because you could have spent some year or two in jail.
Wow.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Did you get locked up when you went up top?
No, the illegal climbs that we did, the first illegal climb involved 4 o'clock in the morning and a lot of bribery. And
how much was it back in the day to get to the top?
This was like 1996. Might even have been earlier. It might have been 1994. And we had a local guy who made contact with all the guards around the pyramid. We paid him money. I forget the exact amount. He said he'd paid them off. But then when we got to the base of the pyramid, we had to walk all the way around it, which is a considerable distance, 750 feet along each side. We had to walk all the way around it, and then we had to add more money to each of the guards at the four corners. And then we went up, and my advice to anybody who's climbing the Great Pyramid, which is pretty much impossible these days, either legally or illegally, is go up the southwest corner, because the southwest corner is pretty intact. It's pretty much a straight line. You can follow it all the way to the.
What is the entrance on?
North side.
That's north.
Yeah.
So south.
The opposite
west.
side, and the southwest.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite side to the Great Sphinx, and
then nobody's looking at you.
Well, it's good for that.
Muslims are all facing east to pray.
But
so
then
you got
after
the whole southwest.
we were a few courses up, and another guard turned up with a shotgun. I don't think it would have reached us from that distance, but there were threats, and we had to promise to pay him more money.
So he points the shotgun.
Yeah,
he's threatening you.
Yeah,
you guys go, we'll pay you, and he's like, okay, well now you can.
Basically, we did a deal that we'd pay him when we came down, and
did you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's good to keep your promises.
That's
and then we climbed.
Do you remember how much you paid?
I actually don't. But back in the day, I guess it was probably 1994. It would have seemed a lot to me at that time, but it also seemed worth it. It was a fantastic adventure, starting in the dark, or just the beginning of dawn light, and climbing up to the top, taking shelter at various points behind bits as other guards appeared, finally getting to the top, and then the light coming up and just this majestic view.
So sunrise on the top of the
sunrise on top of the Great Pyramid, and the second pyramid, to your south. It's just an amazing thing to see, and it was an amazing experience. I would regard it as one of the peak experiences of my life.
Wow.
I did have one other illegal climb, which was just fortunate. It was following the holiday of Ramadan. They have a thing called the Eid, which is a celebration, and I would guess there were 30,000 Cairenes on the Giza Plateau having picnics, and they just decided they were going to climb the Great Pyramid. Not all 30,000, but several hundred of them, and we just joined them, me and Santha, and we climbed with them, and that actually is one of the moments when I realized how difficult the Great Pyramid must have been to build. Because the biggest danger climbing up there with several hundred people on the pyramid was other people coming up and down.
So imagine managing that with all the blocks.
With all the blocks and supposedly a huge workforce and ramps or whatever the Egyptologists imagined was done, and I don't believe anybody knows how it was done. For me, that was the biggest risk, was people bumping into you, going around you as you're climbing up. But again, we got to the top, and then I had 3 legal climbs in those days when those were allowed, doing various filming projects.
Next, Hancock talks about discovering his grandfather's signature carved into the pyramid walls, and the surprising evidence that confirmed it was truly his.
When do you see your last name inscribed in the block? This is an incredible story.
Yes, it is. I think it was on the second or third climb. I'm not absolutely sure. I think it may have been one of the legal climbs, because it was daylight and we were relaxed, as we were not when there were hundreds of other people up there with us. So I think it may have been one of the legal climbs, and there I did see, and it's on the south side of the Great Pyramid, the southeast side, overlooking the boat museum, which used to be there, and there was the name initial P and Hancock. And at that time, there was a date beside it, and that date, if I recall correctly, was the 5th of April, 1916. Oddly enough,
1916.
Yeah. Now my granddad was a chaplain with British forces in Egypt in the First World War, so I had to consider the possibility that it could be him. He was called Philip Hancock.
Oh, wow.
But I couldn't absolutely guarantee that. And I was able to confirm it by finding my grandfather's diaries, which were little diaries about that high, tiny little writing in them. And on that date, there was a single line which said, "Climb Great Pyramid today."
Wow.
And then I found...
And it was dated 1916?
Yeah. And then I found his biography, which was passed down to me by my dad. And he also talks about his climb of the Great Pyramid in that, although in very spare terms, doesn't say that much about it.
I know it's not that much that he put in there, but did he say there was any security? Was
at
this
that time,
free
no.
range?
Totally,
Sand is
totally
covering
free,
the bottom
totally
of it?
free range. And I think the sand was definitely cleared away at that time. But anybody could climb the Great Pyramid.
Hancock also explores the possibility of ancient cities hidden beneath the ocean, mysterious sites that could rewrite everything we know about human history.
The huge areas of the world that have never been looked at by archaeology at all. Or if looked at by archaeology, looked at only minimally. Of course, the most important are the flooded continental shelves. And that's why Santa and I spent 7 years of our lives, frequently risking our lives, scuba diving all around the world. Sea level rose 400 feet at the end of the last ice age. Let's be clear, it did not rise 400 feet overnight.
Right.
This was a rise that was extended over a period of 11 or 12,000 years, from about 21,000 years ago down to 10,000. It was even still rising about 6,000 years ago.
All over the world?
All over the world, yeah. There was a global, all the world's oceans are connected, and all but in local areas, if you have a very steep coastline, the effect of the sea level rise, the amount of land it eats up, is going to be a lot less than if you have a gradually sloping coastline. And 120 feet sea level rise on a very steep bit of coast is going to remove relatively less land, whereas on a very sloping bit of coast, it's going to inundate much more land. And the calculation is that 27 million square kilometers that was above water during the Ice Age is underwater now. Roughly, I think that's roughly 10 million square miles. I can't do the math in my head, but something like that. So it's an awful lot of land. I think it's Europe and China added together.
Wow.
It's not that there's been no archaeology done on the continental shelves. I think we're looking at something from Alexandria here.
Yes.
Yeah, we are. I've dived there as well. And that's inundated not because of sea level rise, but because of subsidence of the Nile silts. Alexandria stands on the Nile Delta, and the silts subsided and resulted in the flooding of this. The Nile carries a lot of silt with it, a lot of earth with it, as it flows out of Uganda and out of Ethiopia and northwards into Egypt, and you come to the Nile Delta, and all that earth it's carrying, which also provided the fertility of ancient Egypt, all that silt is then dumped in the Nile Delta, and there were constructions were made on top of it. And the submergence of the sites off Alexandria, which is a magical, spooky place to dive, by the way. I've been lucky enough to dive there. The submergence of those sites is largely because of subsidence of land rather than sea level rise, because it's relatively recent. Those sites
you're saying the
old.
silt itself has dropped.
Yeah.
Right.
So anything built on
solid ground.
Yeah. Anything built on top of it.
Spooky place to dive.
Well, because you're coming across statues underwater, you're coming across columns underwater. The visibility is not perfect. It's a little bit kind of weird, and it's just magical in diving on an underwater city. But I cannot claim, and I do not claim that city is 12,000 years old. No, it's not. But I do claim that in connection with a giant stone circle called of Akijima in the Kerama Islands in Japan, which is 30 meters under sea level, where there has been no land subsidence, where you can calculate that it's been underwater for 12,000 years. I do absolutely claim that in terms of the enormous structures that lie off the coast of Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu, in southeast India. Pumpahar, a little further south, there's a huge U-shaped structure underwater there that Santha and I dived on with a team from the National Institute of Oceanography in India. You have to be careful when you look at underwater structures. You have to look at all the conditions that have led to their submergence. And in some cases, it's very clear that they've been underwater for a very, very, very long time indeed. Malta, which we featured in Ancient Apocalypse.
Wait, when you went to Malta, did you go? Malta's the one that's divided. There's like an active civil war going on, right?
No, not for a long time. No.
But there's like a
Lebanon.
Turkish side and then a Orthodox Christian side, and they're basically like a border that they just kind of built.
No, not in Malta.
Am I not thinking
Cyprus?
Not in Malta.
Oh, am I thinking about Cyprus?
Yeah, could be Cyprus. No, Malta.
Malta's a wonderful tax haven and good place to shoot.
Malta's a piece. Malta's a piece.
It
has been for a long time. But Malta used to be joined to Sicily during the Ice Age. Malta wasn't an island; it was part of the mainland.
Yeah.
Part of toe of Italy, Sicily, all the way out to Malta was all above water during the Ice Age and all underwater now. So one of my interests as a diver is what do we find underwater in Malta? And what you find strikingly underwater in Malta is a repetition of the so-called cart ruts that you find above water in Malta as well, which have never been properly...
Cart ruts?
Yes, they're parallel tracks that are cut into the bedrock on the island of Malta. And they look actually like railway tracks in a way. I'm not claiming they were a railway, but they look, that's just a comparison. And there are even junctions in them. And nobody knows what they are. The word cart ruts is what they're called, but the notion that they were gradually cut out by carts being rolled over them doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It looks like they've been cut by hand, but more interesting is the fact that they continue underwater. And we've dived on those cart ruts down to 27 meters, which is 80, 90 feet maybe underwater. They've been underwater for thousands and thousands of years.
And?
So then the issue becomes, are we secure on the dating of all the structures above water on Malta? And I suggest strongly that we're not. There's been very little carbon dating done on the Maltese temples. That carbon dating is itself insecure.
Hancock then discusses his upcoming debate on the Joe Rogan podcast, where he plans to go head-to-head with a mainstream archaeologist, aiming to prove the truth in his theories.
I'm doing a debate with a leading archaeologist on the Joe Rogan Experience on the 24th of October.
Joe be having people debate, huh? That's his thing.
It's a very good thing that this is happening. It's the first time that somebody representing the alternative point of view has actually been debated by somebody from the mainstream. The mainstream has normally said, "Now we don't want to talk to you guys. You're Looney Tunes. We're not going to give you a platform." But in this case, it is happening, and I have things to say about Malta that I'm going to preserve my ammunition for.
Nice. Can you give us a taste? Can you give us a little taste?
It's to do with the absolute insecurity of the carbon dating.
Okay.
I see.
Got it.
Do you think there's any submerged pyramids?
Just to finish that point, carbon dating, by the way, and again, this is not something that everybody knows. Carbon dating can only date organic material. It can't date stone. So if you're going to date a megalith according to the organic material found around you, you want to be pretty sure that the organic material dates from the same time as the megalith and wasn't introduced later.
Right. And there's no way in proving that it is or it isn't.
Well, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do. And the fact is, there are very few carbon dates from Malta, and the new dating work that's been done there hasn't added usefully to that database.
And when are you doing this on Joe's pod?
So 24th of October. The archaeologist who's going to debate me is called Flint Dibble. He's American, but he teaches at the University of Cardiff in Wales, in Britain. His father was a famous archaeologist called Harold Dibble. Flint has been very pointed and aggressive in his attacks on me following the Netflix show, which he has every right to be. I had wanted to debate another archaeologist who's called John Hoops from the University of Kansas, because he has been by far the most obnoxious in leveling these ad hominem attacks against me. And straw men attacks, like Hancock says this, Hancock says that, when Hancock doesn't say either this or that. But if you say it enough, it begins to have an effect. And I would have liked to have called John Hoops to account and invited him to debate me, but unfortunately he backed out and he wouldn't do it. Flint Dibble, and this is genuine, Flint Dibble has had some health issues. I won't go into the details. And we've not been certain until very recently whether he will be able to make it. But kudos to him. It looks like he is going to make it.
Great.
And what he's doing and what I'm doing on the 24th of October is we're both putting our reputations on the line. This is a
pay-per-view event.
This is a high stakes. This is a high stakes issue for both me and him, because anything can happen in a debate, and I certainly intend to make sure that I'm properly prepared. I'm sure he's going to make sure he's properly prepared. I hope we can end up hugging each other and finding some common ground, rather than all of this hatred.
Hancock now delves into what he believes was the original purpose of the pyramids, a theory that challenges everything we've been taught.
What was their daily ritual use for the pyramids of Giza that you theorize?
Well, actually, nobody has any idea. The Great Pyramid was sealed. It was a sealed monument. So in roughly 900 AD, forgive me if I don't give you the exact date, give or take 50 years, the Caliph al-Mamun, who was running Egypt at the time, wanted to get inside the Great Pyramid. This is 400 years before the earthquake. The facing stones are still in place. He could not find the true entrance to the Great Pyramid. It turned out that it could have been found. According to accounts, there was some sort of almost like a button that you pressed, and the doorway would slide, the facing stones would slide away, and you could find the true entrance. But he couldn't find that. But he did know that other pyramids had their entrance in the north face, other older pyramids, like the Pyramid of Unas. He knew they had their entrance in the north face. So he started hacking away at the north face of the Great Pyramid. And that is the entrance through which you will have gone when you entered the Great Pyramid. It's called Mamun's Hole. He and his team hacked it out with sledgehammers and chisels, and they broke their way in to the north face. And then as they were doing so, they heard a block falling in a hollow space. And then they knew they were onto something. That block that fell, caused by the vibrations that they had caused, must have been in some kind of passageway or chamber. So they headed towards that sound, and that's where they found the original passageway system of the Great Pyramid, which after you've gone through Mamun's Hole, gone round a little corner where it's all cut out of the rock, and then you find yourself going up into first of all, the ascending corridor, and then the Grand Gallery, which is a most majestic structure. They found the original entrance system in that way, and now the true original entrance is open, but it's not used by tourists who enter the Great Pyramid.
Hancock now explores the hidden truth about what Antarctica may have really been like in the distant past, a version of history few have ever heard.
Okay, I want to talk about Antarctica, because I think this is going to be the new obsession. I feel like it's trending super high. Who knows if there's any truth to it, but a friend of ours, who will remain nameless, went there. Got to go on a cool experience, trip, etc. And he said a couple interesting things. He said the mountains looked eerily pointy and four-sided. He said way more mountainous than he thought it would be. I think the illusion, maybe from looking at maps and watching penguins, is
by the way, you can see
flat
mountains. You can see mountains on the Orontius Phineas map version.
Oh, is that what the little etchings
around the edges there?
Interesting.
Those are mountains.
Now, he also said this. He said a couple things. He said there is a pact with every country that has a slice of it that they will not dig or remove any minerals from Antarctica. And he even said that a scientist was there, said to them, World War III will not start until one of these countries breaks that pact. They are clearly protecting or preserving something that may or may not be under, I believe it's 3 miles, Mark was saying earlier, at its thickest of ice. Now, Mark, maybe you should describe the thing that you were saying before about there was a time where Antarctica...
I was reading an article that perhaps 90 million years ago, there was a lush rainforest that is now covered in miles of ice on the Antarctic continent.
Yeah, that's probably true. If you go back that far, you would find that the Earth's climate was very different from how it is today. And there's undoubtedly a time, they found fossils on Antarctica, there's undoubtedly a time when Antarctica was lush and green. The question is, was it lush and green during the lifetime of the human species?
Yes, this is where it gets tricky.
And this is where it gets tricky. The Homo sapiens line descends from a line that goes back about 6 million years, not much further than that, if we accept conventional evolutionary theory. So 6 million years ago, Antarctica is supposed to have been as cold and as frozen as it is today. Now, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, which is my first book tracing the possibility of a lost civilization, I was very interested in Antarctica, and I was interested in it because of the work of a previous researcher called Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood wrote a number of very important books. One of them is called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which precisely goes into this issue of ancient maps that don't fit our understanding of what the world was, how the world was supposed to be known at that time. And another is called The Path of the Pole. And he proposed a phenomenon that he called Earth crust displacement, whereby from time to time, the entire outer crust of the Earth, like the skin of an orange, might shift, leaving the core of the Earth in place, so that it could so if you imagine a very loose orange skin, the fruit is inside, it's staying in place, but you're shifting the skin around it. Well, obviously then, if that happens, Antarctica could have been in warmer latitudes and could have been shifted into colder latitudes.
And how often does this happen?
Well, does it happen at all is the first question. I mean, of all the theories I've looked at and supported, this is the one that I've come in for the most criticism for. And I've been much more interested recently in the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis and the notion that a cataclysm occurred around 12,800 years ago, caused by impacts of comet fragments, and we can go into that. But when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, although I was interested in comets, I was more interested in Earth crust displacement. And the standard academic response to that is, look, Antarctica's been frozen for millions of years, and that rules out the whole Earth crust displacement argument. I think that even those who are still researching this field would prefer it to be the mantle rather than the crust of the Earth that moves. Again, it's very technical, that moves in one piece.
But the idea is
an Italian admiral called Flavio Barbiero who wrote an article for my website suggesting that Earth crust displacement could be kicked off by a comet impact where hits the Earth a glancing blow and causes a shift of this kind taking place. But by and large, I don't argue these days that Antarctica and Earth crust displacement are the mechanism we should be looking at. I'm much more interested in the very solidly scientifically grounded Younger Dryas impact. Back in 1995, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I was searching around for many possibilities that could have caused a global cataclysm in the range of 12 to 13,000 years ago, because that's what all the astronomy pointed at, 12 to 13,000 years ago. And Hapgood's theory seemed to me a very valuable and useful one. I still won't write it off. I won't dismiss it entirely, but I've shifted in the direction of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis.
Finally, Hancock touches on the possibility of alien contact, linking it to his own experiences with DMT, where he suggests that psychedelics might be a way for aliens to communicate with us.
So, aliens.
Well, you see, this is the thing, that DMT volunteers and I myself on DMT have repeatedly experienced encounters with what might be construed as aliens. As again, I'm handing a stick to my opponents to beat me with. Yeah. And so I would like to point out, and I went into this in depth in my book, Visionary, now titled Visionary, used to be called Supernatural, that the experiences that shamans have with spirits, the experiences that people in the Middle Ages up until about the 1950s had with fairies and elves, and the experiences that people have with aliens today, they're all the same experience, construed through different cultural lenses. The details of the experience in every case are almost identical. Once you get down to the phenomenology and examine the exact experiences that are reported, it turns out that they're all the same experiences. It's just that different cultures construe them in different ways. And right now we're construing those encounters as encounters with aliens. Well, certainly they are alien to this realm, but are they coming in spaceships, or are they crossing interdimensional space, or are they all within our minds somehow?
Mark, the guy that you spoke to, did you put that episode out yet? Yes.
With Rick Barnett, yeah.
Yeah. So Mark spoke to a guy who claims to have been abducted.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
By aliens, right?
Yeah.
And
Jay King.
Yeah, has he dabbled with psychedelics at all?
I don't know. I asked him sort of like
peripherally.
Yeah, peripherally, and he didn't really seem to. He didn't elect that information outright. I didn't press on it.
He may be a natural overproducer of DMT. It's notable that people in the Middle Ages were repeatedly reported being abducted by fairies. Shamans are repeatedly abducted by spirits. Shamans have sex with female spirits in the spirit world. Alien abductees today have sex with aliens and often produce hybrid children. It was the case with fairies as well. It was the same thing. We're just viewing it through different cultural lenses, I think. And I think it's very useful to analyze this experience if you look at these earlier examples of how it was construed.
Yeah, there were like ancient civilizations that spoke of the star people, or like, is that a version of
There's
that?
There's a fascinating imagery on the second shrine of the tomb of Tutankhamun, which is in the museum in Cairo now. And what it is, it's a gold. The whole shrine is covered in gold, and on one side of it is an image of individuals who are in mummified form, but they're looking up at a star, and rays from the star are coming down into their forehead, right into their forehead, and talk about star people and talk about the pineal gland. I mean, that's what it seems like. Let's see if we can find
any of these, perhaps.
That's actually from the second shrine, but that's not the image I'm talking about. That may be the image. Let's have a look at that. Yeah. My eyesight's so shit, I can't see.
Yeah, it's not very high quality.
No, that's not it anyway. But anybody who searches far enough and spends enough time will find it. It's a very famous image. And there's this direct connection with the stars that is manifested in that image.
So as far as global knowledge is concerned, all these ancient cultures building pyramids, building different mound structures, connected to the stars in some capacity. I know it's been posited that there's ancient civilization that's potentially going around. Is it possible that it's just connection with psychedelics that occur naturally all over the earth, and even internally with us through holotropic breathwork that could give those revelations?
My view on a possible lost human civilization is, first of all, that civilization, like all other civilizations on Earth, emerged out of shamanism. And that psychedelics and the use of consciousness-altering plants and fungi were fundamental to that shamanistic culture, just as they were to every other shamanistic culture. But it took a different direction from some other ones and became capable of navigating and exploring the Earth at a very, very early date and studied astronomy in an almost scientific sense.
Do you think it's possible that this same experience happened to what are we, Homo sapien?
We're Homo sapiens, yeah.
Did it happen to, what were you bringing up earlier?
Homo erectus,
Neanderthals. Could they have also dabbled? Did they have the intellect?
I think it certainly happened with Neanderthals. There's more and more evidence that cave art that was attributed to Homo sapiens was actually done by Neanderthals.
Wow.
And it may be that the Neanderthals taught the ancestors of anatomically modern humans how to paint. That is even possible. There's very strong evidence now that Neanderthals were doing cave art, and the same geometric patterns and the same entities appeared there. They're not so different from anatomically modern humans, and anyway, they live on in us because there's so much Neanderthal DNA up to these may be some examples of Neanderthal cave art.
But did Homo erectus, I think you mentioned that they were sailing?
Well, they certainly did sail, because they got, as far as I recall, even as far away as some of the Pacific Islands, Micronesia, maybe even New Guinea. But the problem is we don't have any evidence from that period, apart from a few skeletal and fossil remains. The evidence for psychedelic use in cave art is fundamentally derives from the art itself.
Yeah.
That was why I went to the Amazon to drink ayahuasca in 2003. I thought I had finished my inquiry into the possibility of a lost civilization. I was wrong. I went back to it later because new evidence, particularly Göbekli Tepe, came out. I was looking for a new subject that really interested me. Human origins interested me. And then this sort of burst of symbolism and creativity that occurs 100,000 years ago or less. And that's when I started to look at cave art. And then I came across the work of a professor at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, David Lewis Williams. His neuropsychological model of cave art suggested that cave art was documenting experiences in deeply altered states of consciousness. And he made a strong case for that. Then I thought, okay, let's look at cultures that are using deeply altered states of consciousness now. So I started looking at the Amazon, and I came across an amazing book written by Luis Eduardo Luna, with paintings by Pablo Amaringo, an Amazonian shaman, depicting his ayahuasca visions, and lo and behold, there were so many common points with the cave art. I'm a boots-on-the-ground researcher. I can't write a book about something if I don't experience it. That's why I spent 7 years scuba diving. So, you know, I said to Santha, we have to go to the Amazon and drink ayahuasca if I'm going to write this book authentically.
Does cave art make more sense to you now after having the...
Oh, completely, yeah. Yeah, it makes complete sense to me. It certainly wasn't about hunting magic. They weren't trying to cast magical spells on the animals that they wanted to hunt. Only about 2% of all animals shown in cave art are pierced by any kind of projectile, as a matter of fact. There's no evidence that they were eating the animals that are depicted in the cave art. A lot of animals are depicted, but shamans often experience themselves transforming into animals. Spirit animals, right. You know? So it all makes much more sense to me, and the geometry that accompanies it, and the scintillating patterns. It's all psychedelic art, in my view.
You have made it to the end of the video. Thank you. Please remember to like and subscribe for more content like this.